Some people move through life with an invisible question always running in the background. Am I enough? Not just in moments of doubt or insecurity, but constantly, like a program that never closes. They check reactions after they speak. They scan faces for approval. They measure their worth by how others respond to them. And from the outside, this might look like confidence, like social skill, like someone who's engaged and attentive. But internally, it's something else entirely. It's a deep uncertainty about their own value that can only be temporarily quieted by external confirmation. They need to know they're good enough, smart enough, attractive enough, interesting enough. And that knowing has to come from outside because the internal sense of worth was never firmly established. This is the psychology of someone who seeks validation, not occasionally, as everyone does, but as a fundamental way of understanding whether they matter. The need for validation often begins in childhood, though not always in obvious ways. Sometimes it comes from environments where love felt conditional, where approval had to be earned through achievement, appearance, or behavior, where attention was inconsistent, given freely one day and withheld the next without clear explanation. The child learns that their value isn't inherent, it's something determined by external response. So they begin watching, adjusting, performing, trying to figure out the formula that guarantees they'll be seen as worthy. And when they get it right, when someone praises them or acknowledges them or expresses approval, it feels like relief, like proof, however temporary, that they're acceptable. But here's what makes this pattern so difficult. The relief never lasts. External validation is like drinking salt water. It provides momentary satisfaction, but it ultimately makes the thirst worse. You receive a compliment and feel good for a few minutes or hours. Then the doubt creeps back in. Was that person being sincere? Do they still think that about me now? What if they change their mind? And suddenly, you need another confirmation, another piece of evidence that you're still valuable. The cycle continues and the dependency deepens. People who seek validation are often incredibly attuned to others. They read micro-expressions, vocal tones, body language with remarkable accuracy. They can sense when someone is pleased or disappointed, interested or bored, approving or judging. This sensitivity develops as a survival skill. When your sense of worth depends on others' perceptions, you become expert at detecting those perceptions. But this constant monitoring is exhausting. Every interaction becomes a performance review. Every social situation carries stakes. You're not just being yourself. You're trying to be the version of yourself that others will validate. This shows up differently depending on where someone seeks their validation. Some focus on appearance, constantly checking mirrors, asking, "How do I look?" fishing for compliments, feeling devastated when they're not noticed or praised. Their worth becomes tied to being attractive, and anything that threatens that attractiveness, aging, weight changes, comparison to others, becomes a source of deep anxiety. Others seek validation through achievement. They need to be the best, the smartest, the most successful. They chase credentials, awards, recognition, not because they genuinely want these things, but because these external markers temporarily quiet the question of whether they're good enough. Still others seek validation through relationships, needing constant reassurance that they're loved, wanted, important. They might text frequently, seeking responses that confirm the other person still cares. They might feel anxious when communication decreases, interpreting silence as rejection. They might stay in relationships that aren't healthy because leaving would mean losing a source of validation. Or they might jump quickly from one relationship to another, unable to tolerate the feeling of being unattached because being chosen by someone feels like proof of value. Social media has amplified this psychology in unprecedented ways. Every post becomes an opportunity for validation or rejection. You share something and immediately check for responses. Likes, comments, shares, these become metrics of worth. A post that gets a lot of engagement makes you feel good, visible, confirmed. A post that's ignored feels like public rejection. You start curating your life not based on what you actually enjoy or value, but based on what generates responses. The validation seeking moves from internal psychology to documented behavior, where everyone can see you performing for approval even if they don't recognize what they're witnessing. What makes this particularly painful is that people who seek validation often feel ashamed of needing it. They recognize it's happening. They know they're fishing for compliments, checking for likes, adjusting themselves based on others' reactions, and they judge themselves for it. They think they should be more confident, more self-assured, more independent. But the need doesn't disappear just because you're ashamed of it. It just gets hidden better, expressed more subtly, creating even more internal conflict between who you want to be and what you actually need. The psychology behind validation seeking usually connects to a fragile or underdeveloped sense of self. When you don't have a stable internal sense of who you are and whether that person is valuable, you outsource that determination to others. You let their responses tell you who you are. If they approve, you're good. If they're indifferent, you're invisible. If they criticize, you're worthless. This makes your identity incredibly unstable because it's constantly shifting based on external input. You become a different version of yourself depending on who you're with, what they value, what generates positive responses, and over time, you lose touch with any authentic core because everything has been shaped by the need for validation. Decision-making becomes complicated when you seek validation. You struggle to know what you actually want because you're so focused on what others want from you. Should you take this job, date this person, move to this city, pursue this interest? The answer depends less on your genuine desires and more on what you think will earn approval. Will people be impressed? Will they think this is a good choice? Will this make me look successful or interesting or valuable? Your life becomes a series of choices made to generate external confirmation rather than internal satisfaction. There's also often a people-pleasing component to validation seeking. You learn to anticipate what others want and provide it. You become agreeable, accommodating, helpful. Not because you genuinely want to help, though sometimes you do, but because being liked, being appreciated, being needed are all forms of validation. They confirm that you matter, that your presence adds value, so you say yes when you want to say no. You sacrifice your preferences to maintain approval. You suppress disagreement or disappointment to avoid rejection. And slowly, you lose the ability to know what you actually think or feel separate from what others want you to think or feel. Criticism or rejection hits people who seek validation with particular intensity. What might feel like minor feedback to someone else feels catastrophic, because it's not just feedback about a specific thing, it feels like judgment on your entire worth. Someone doesn't like your work and you hear you're not good enough. Someone cancels plans and you interpret it as you don't matter to them. Someone doesn't respond to a message and your mind spirals into, they hate me, I said something wrong, I'm too much, I'm not enough. The validation-seeking mind has difficulty separating specific feedback from total rejection. Many people who seek validation also struggle with imposter syndrome. Even when they achieve things, even when people express genuine admiration or respect, they can't internalize it. They attribute success to luck, timing, other people's generosity. They live in fear that others will discover they're not actually as capable or valuable as they appear. The validation they receive doesn't penetrate deeply enough to change their internal sense of inadequacy. It just creates pressure to maintain the facade that earned the validation in the first place. The exhaustion that comes from constant validation seeking is real and profound. You're essentially performing all the time, monitoring responses all the time, adjusting yourself all the time based on external feedback. You can't relax into being because being isn't the goal. Being validated is. And since validation is temporary and must be constantly renewed, you never get to rest. Even moments that should feel good, receiving a compliment, achieving something, being chosen, they come with the immediate anxiety of, will this last? What if they change their mind? What do I need to do to keep this? Relationships become particularly complex. You attract people based on the version of yourself you've created to be validated, which means they're not actually connecting with who you really are. And you know this on some level, which creates anxiety. If they really knew you, if they saw the parts you hide, would they still approve? Would they still choose you? So you maintain the performance, which prevents genuine intimacy, which means the relationship can never provide the deep sense of being known and valued that you're actually seeking. You end up feeling lonely, even in partnership, validated but not truly seen. Some validation seekers become high achievers, constantly pursuing external markers of success. Others become chameleons, shape-shifting to fit whatever environment they're in. Some become attention seekers, needing to be noticed, to be the center of conversation. Others become self-deprecating, putting themselves down to fish for reassurance. The behaviors vary, but the underlying mechanism is the same, using external input to determine internal worth. What often drives someone to finally address their validation seeking is exhaustion or crisis. The constant performance becomes unsustainable, or they achieve everything they thought would make them feel valuable and discover it didn't work. Or a relationship ends and they're forced to confront how much of themselves was constructed for someone else's approval. Or they simply wake up one day and realize they don't actually know who they are underneath all the adjusting and performing. And that realization, while painful, is also the beginning of something different. Healing from validation seeking doesn't mean never wanting or appreciating external approval. That's human. Everyone likes being recognized, appreciated, valued by others. The difference is whether external validation is supplementing an existing sense of worth or desperately trying to create one. The work involves building internal foundations that don't require constant external reinforcement, learning that your value exists whether or not anyone acknowledges it, that you can make choices based on what you actually want rather than what will generate approval, that being authentic, even if it means some people don't validate you, is more satisfying than being validated for being someone you're not. This work is uncomfortable because it means sitting with the uncertainty you've been avoiding your whole life. What if you stop seeking validation and discover you are actually worthless? That's the fear underneath. But what actually happens is you discover that worth isn't something determined by external response at all. It's inherent. It exists simply because you exist. And while external appreciation is nice, enjoyable, sometimes deeply meaningful, it's no longer the thing that determines whether you're acceptable. You start making decisions that feel right, even if no one applauds them. You start expressing opinions, even if they're not popular. You start showing up as yourself, even when that self isn't what others expected or wanted. The shift from external to internal validation isn't quick or linear. You'll still catch yourself checking for approval, measuring yourself by others' responses, adjusting based on feedback. Those patterns are deeply ingrained, but gradually you start noticing it happening. You start choosing differently. You start asking yourself, what do I actually think about this? Instead of, what will others think? You start building a relationship with yourself that's based on honest self-knowledge rather than curated presentation. Eventually, you discover something surprising. The people who truly value you aren't the ones who validated your performance. They're the ones who see you clearly, imperfections and all, and choose connection anyway. And that kind of recognition, the kind that comes from being genuinely known rather than carefully presented, satisfies in ways that validation seeking never could. Because it's real. It's not about you being enough for others. It's about you being enough for yourself and finding people who appreciate that authentic self rather than the version you thought you needed to be. People who seek validation aren't weak or broken. They're people who learned early that their worth was conditional, that acceptance had to be earned, that mattering required external confirmation. And they developed sophisticated strategies to get that confirmation. But those strategies, however effective they once seemed, ultimately keep you trapped in a cycle where you're never quite enough, never quite secure, never quite able to rest in your own value. The path forward isn't about getting better at earning validation. It's about building a sense of self that doesn't require it. And that's not loss, that's freedom.